All right, so today we're tackling a listener request, a deep dive into building a business plan for an online marketplace.
Yeah, like having your own Amazon or Etsy.
Exactly. And to help us break it all down, we have with us a total pro in e-commerce and business strategy.
Happy to be here.
So we're using the guide that you sent us called Marketplace Business Plan, Create Websites Like Amazon 2024.
Right.
And right out of the gate, this thing drops a pretty mind-blowing stat.
Oh, yeah.
Global e-commerce sales by 2030 are projected to hit $11.5 trillion.
Trillion of the T.
Trillion with a T. That's insane. So what's fueling this massive growth?
Well, it's definitely not a temporary blip. What we're seeing is this consistent year-over-year growth, and that really points to like a fundamental shift in how people are shopping.
So this isn't just a passing trend.
No, this is the future of how business is done.
Okay, so even if we're not all trying to become the next Jeff Bezos, having a really strong business plan is still crucial.
100% crucial.
Oh, yeah, why?
Think of it like this. A business plan is your blueprint. It helps you attract investors.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also helps you just clarify your vision. Understand your market and anticipate those challenges before they even come up.
So the guide we're looking at breaks down the process into 7 key steps. And I'm curious, like in your experience working with businesses on these plans, where do people kind of get stuck?
It's funny. I see people skipping over that first step a lot, which is the market study.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to just jump right into building a platform. But without understanding what's already out there, it's kind of like sailing without a compass.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So step 1 is all about, understanding the landscape, the existing market, but it's more than just looking at numbers, right?
Yeah.
The guide highlights that companies that actually incorporate customer feedback into product development have like a 30% higher success rate for new product launches.
That's a huge difference, and that's a really important takeaway because you can have the most genius idea in the world. But if it doesn't actually solve a problem for your target customer, it's just going to flop.
So understanding what your customer actually wants.
Yes, even before you start building.
Is crucial.
Yes.
So how do we get beyond, just basic demographics and really understand what makes our target audience tick?
That's where step 2 comes in, defining your target audience. And this is where we're really getting into psychographics.
Psychographics.
Yeah, and this is understanding what motivates them, what they value, even their fears and aspirations.
This feels like the point where it gets really, really interesting because we're going beyond just, age and location and really getting into like the why behind their buying decisions.
Exactly. And let's say you're creating a marketplace for, let's say, vintage clothing.
Okay.
Knowing your target audience loves fashion is important. But if you can figure out that they're really passionate about sustainability or, finding unique pieces with a story, like that's where you can really stand out.
Yeah, and the guide actually mentions that businesses that use this combined approach of demographics and psychographics actually see a 20 to 30% higher engagement rate.
That's a huge advantage.
Yeah.
And it's because you're really crafting your marketing campaigns and products to speak to their values.
So now let's talk about the foundation of your marketplace, choosing the right business model. I know there's B2B and B2C, but in the context of, building an online marketplace, what do those actually mean?
So it really comes down to who you're selling to B2B business to business means you're connecting businesses with other businesses. So like a platform where manufacturers sell wholesale goods to retailers.
Okay.
And then B2C business to consumer that's connecting businesses directly with individual shoppers. So like a site where you buy handmade jewelry directly from the person who made it.
Now, there's a point in the guide that I thought was really interesting. It says that while B2B might seem like it's slower paced, it can actually lead to higher profit margins per transaction compared to B2C. Why is that?
Well, often it comes down to order volume and the pricing. So with B2B, businesses are usually buying in bulk.
Okay.
So that means larger orders, potentially higher individual prices. While B2C is often relying on just like a higher volume of smaller sales.
So really considering your target audience and the types of products you want to offer can influence that choice between B2B and B2C.
Yeah, absolutely. And choosing the right model from the get-go can streamline your whole operation, from your marketing to your pricing strategies to, finding vendors and customer support.
Okay, let's get a little bit technical. Step 4 in the guide is all about selecting the right e-commerce solution. And I'll be honest, I'm not a tech whiz, so this is where I start to feel a little bit overwhelmed.
I get that.
So what are our options here?
Essentially, you got 2 paths. You can build your marketplace from scratch, or you can use a pre-built platform.
Building it from scratch sounds pretty intense.
It can be. It requires a lot of technical expertise, time, resources. You're basically building everything from the ground up, the coding, the design, the payment gateways, the whole 9 yards.
So unless you have like a team of developers at your disposal,
Right.
the guide is kind of pointing us towards the pre-built platforms.
Yes. And for good reason. These platforms like Shopify or Magento, they give you a foundation that's already made.
Okay.
They come with things like payment processing tools to manage your vendors, and often even built-in marketing features.
Okay, so that takes a lot of the pressure off in terms of the technical side of things.
For sure.
But how do you know which pre-built platform is the right one for, your specific marketplace?
That's where it gets really interesting, and you need to consider your needs and your goals.
Okay.
What kind of products are you offering?
Mm-hmm.
How many vendors do you expect to have? And how much do you want to be able to customize things?
Yeah, of course, budget's a consideration.
Huge consideration.
The guide mentions that using a pre-built platform can actually reduce your development costs by up to 70% compared to building it from scratch.
Yeah, that's a massive difference, especially if you're just starting out.
All right, so we've laid some groundwork here. We talked about, market research, target audience, choosing the right business model, and picking our e-commerce platform.
Yeah, it's a good start.
But before we move on, I think we should circle back to something we kind of skimmed over: psychographics.
Yeah, I think that's worth a deeper dive.
I agree. It's one thing to know like the average age of your customer,
Right.
but it's a whole other thing to understand, their motivations and their values.
Exactly. So let's say you're building a marketplace for sustainable home goods.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that your audience cares about the environment, that's a start.
Right.
But understanding why they care about sustainability. Like, is it about reducing their carbon footprint? Is it about supporting ethical businesses? Those nuances can make all the difference.
So how do we actually get this psychographic information?
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
Surveys and focus groups can be helpful.
Okay.
But you can also get a lot of insight from social media, like what are people talking about in your niche? What hashtags are they using? What influencers are they following?
You can even analyze the language they use in online reviews.
Oh, totally. Are they using terms like, artisan or handmade? Do they care about durability or affordability? Those little clues can tell you a lot about their values.
That's really cool. So once we have this information, how do we actually use it?
It's about weaving those insights into everything you do.
Okay.
From crafting your marketing campaigns to picking the right products, psychographics can really shape your whole strategy.
And the guide mentions that businesses using this approach see like a 20 to 30% higher engagement rate.
Yeah, that's huge.
So do you have any like practical examples of how that plays out in the real world?
So let's go back to that sustainable home goods marketplace.
Okay.
Instead of just saying, eco-friendly products, you can highlight the specific values that your audience cares about.
All right.
So maybe you run a campaign that focuses on, reducing your carbon footprint or supporting fair trade practices.
So you're speaking directly to their motivations.
Exactly. And that builds a deeper connection, which can lead to loyal customers and more word-of-mouth marketing.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears back over to the technical side. We've got our e-commerce platform picked out, but now we need to tackle step 5, documentation and domain registration.
Right. This step is all about laying the legal and technical foundation.
The boring but important stuff.
Yeah, it might not be the most exciting part, but it's crucial for protecting your brand and making sure you're operating safely online.
So what are the key things we need to do here?
Well, first you got to choose and register your domain name.
Our online address.
Exactly. It's your digital storefront. It's the first thing people see.
Yeah.
And it's really important for brand recognition.
And the guide actually says a memorable domain name can lead to a 25% higher click-through rate.
Yeah, that's a big deal just from having a good name. So put some thought into this.
Okay.
Make it short, easy to remember, relevant to your niche, and obviously make sure it's available.
Okay, got it. Domain name secured.
Mm-hmm.
What else falls under this documentation umbrella?
Well, you need to think about legal stuff like trademark registration to protect your brand name and an SSL certificate for secure transactions.
That's that little padlock icon in the web address bar that tells you a site is secure.
Exactly. It shows your customers that you care about their safety, especially when they're entering sensitive information like credit card details.
Okay, so this step is about protecting both us and our customers.
Right.
Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Money step 6 is all about estimating those startup costs.
Yeah. This is where things can get tricky. It's easy to underestimate how much it actually costs to get a marketplace up and running.
The guide did say that starting an online marketplace is generally cheaper than a traditional brick-and-mortar business.
That's true.
But we still need to be realistic about those expenses.
For sure, we're talking about platform fees, web hosting marketing costs, maybe legal fees, and you might even need to hire some help.
It can add up quickly. Any tips on how to keep those costs down, especially in those early stages?
Well, the guide recommends starting with a minimum viable product, or MVP. Basically, instead of launching with every single feature you can think of, just focus on the essentials, the core things you need to get your marketplace going.
So start small, test it out, and then scale up as you grow.
Exactly. It's a smarter approach that lets you validate your idea and get feedback from customers before you spend a ton of money on extra features.
Okay, so we've covered a lot: choosing a business model, getting our tech set up, tackling the legal stuff, and figuring out our budget.
We're making progress.
What's the final piece of the puzzle?
Well, the heart of any good marketplace is the vendors, but I think that's the conversation for our next segment.
You got it. We'll be right back after a quick break to dive into the world of vendor acquisition and onboarding. Stay tuned. All right, so we're back and ready to tackle that last key step, vendor onboarding strategies. We've got the platform, we've got our target audience figured out, but without those vendors, we've got like a big empty store.
Totally. It's true. Attracting and retaining those vendors is really the lifeblood of any good marketplace. I like to think of it like building a farmer's market.
Yeah.
You need those farmers with all the good stuff to bring in the crowds.
Right. And the guide calls vendors an indispensable asset, which I think is spot on.
Yeah, for sure.
But how do we actually find these amazing vendors and convince them to join our platform?
Well, you need a plan. You got to get strategic. Think about who those ideal vendors are for your marketplace. Where do they hang out online? What are their pain points and how can you solve them?
The guide mentions specifically targeting small businesses, especially in the beginning. Why is that?
Small businesses are often a little bit more flexible. They're more willing to experiment with new platforms and they really want to grow. And they might be more open to things like lower commission rates or those early adopter perks.
So we found our ideal vendors. We're reaching out to them. But how do we actually convince them to make the jump and join our marketplace?
You got to have a good pitch.
Okay.
You need a compelling value proposition that clearly shows them why joining your platform is good for them.
Okay, so what makes our marketplace stand out? What can we offer them?
Right? Are you giving them access to a huge customer base, streamlined payments, marketing support? It could be all of those things.
Okay.
It really comes down to what those specific vendors need and care about. Maybe you have lower fees than the competition. Maybe you offer awesome customer support to take some of the work off their plate.
Right, so we've got them hooked, they're excited, they're joining, but then what the guide emphasizes the importance of having a smooth onboarding process. Why is that so crucial?
Imagine you're a vendor and you're stoked to join this new platform, but then you hit a wall. The registration is confusing, the website's clunky, you can't find answers to your questions. What happens? You get frustrated, you lose momentum, maybe you even give up.
And that's the opposite of what we want.
Right.
Especially since the guide says that marketplaces with really streamlined onboarding processes have something like 50% higher vendor retention rates in those first 6 months.
That's huge. So, making a good experience. Think clear instructions, step-by-step guides, helpful videos, readily available FAQs, anything to make that transition easy.
So it's not just about getting them signed up, it's about supporting them so they can really do well on our platform.
Yeah, you want to give them the tools and the resources to thrive. Offer training on how to make their listings better, give them insights into customer trends, and just be responsive to their questions and concerns.
Makes sense. When vendors feel supported, they're more likely to stay and really invest in your platform.
Exactly, and that helps your marketplace grow and thrive.
So we've covered a lot today.
We have.
From understanding our target audience to picking the right business model to getting those vendors on board.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
It has. But before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to you, the listener. Why should you care about building a successful online marketplace?
Well, it's about more than just building a website. It's about creating a community, a place where people can connect over shared interests.
It's about turning your own passion and vision into a thriving online space.
Exactly. Whether you want to be the next Amazon or create a niche marketplace for something you love, these steps can help get you there.
So as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a question. Knowing what you know now, what's one action you can take this week to start building your own online marketplace dream?
Every journey starts with a single step. With the right plan, a solid strategy, and a lot of passion, you can make it happen.
We believe in you. And that's a wrap on the deep dive.
Until next time.